Hello everybody, welcome to Thoughts from the Roundtable, and on this amazing episode, we're going to be answering the question that man has had ever since he has stood erect in the sun. And that being, is a man actually a walrus?
Please join us at the round table. As you guys can tell by the title, we're watching the enigma of a movie, Tusk. So, when we first were discussing, what are we going to do this week for the pod? We were like, well, don't really know, not really any movies out. So we decided to go with Old Faithful, an awful horror movie. And boy, did we pick a great one.
I can confidently tell you that when I sent Jacob a list of possible movies this week that I thought of, and he agreed on Tusk, I can say that I never expected what I got from this movie.
Yeah, as you can tell, if you've been a part of this channel, we love awful horror movies. We pretty much like horror movies in general, but really, we prefer the bad ones.
The worse it is, the better my enjoyment of the movie is.
And I think this one, it tries to be funny and fails. It doesn't try to be funny, and it is the best parts of the movie. So, as always with our movie podcast, let's try to give a brief rundown.
Where to even start with this plot, though?
Yeah.
Because... So, okay, let's talk about our main characters.
I think there's 4.
Yeah.
Maybe 5.
Maybe 5?
Yeah, if you include the detective.
We'll get to the detective in a bit here,
okay.
But our main guys are podcasters. Kind of ironic. We're talking about it on a podcast, but these guys are big podcasters. They run the Nazi Party. You
might think, whoa, hey, don't do that. It's NOT-SEE. They have a little meme gimmick.
A little edgy.
Yeah. And one of them, the whole joke behind them not see podcast is one of them goes and talks to a person who's interesting or stupid, and then the other one tells them about it, and that's the gimmick.
One of the main problems I already had at this point with the movie is the believability of this podcast being a thing. Who would watch this?
I mean, there are people who watch ours.
Well, not very many.
Yeah, I don't know. That wasn't very believable. These guys were obnoxious, as are we, but more so.
Definitely not great people in general. The guy who travels, the gimmick of the one guy goes and interviews. He travels. He's an awful person. He has a girlfriend. That's one of our main characters. She doesn't really do too much.
No, she's kind of just there.
She has sex with him and his co-host.
Yeah,
which is awesome.
Yeah, you could tell she was really casted for one particular reason, and that's to be attractive.
That was really her one defining trait. Movie wasn't the kindest to women in this movie. No. I mean, if you're looking for a movie that spearheads a feminist agenda, I would say that this might be the furthest from what you're looking for.
You might want to press play and then take a U-turn and turn it off.
Yeah, because you're not going to get any strong female characters in this movie. Not a one. Which, now that I'm saying that, is kind of throwing me off. Like, this movie was not that old.
No, 2014.
2014 is when this came out, and this released in theaters. And there was the only woman in the movie. Its only purpose was to have sex with both of the main men.
Yeah, and just to take a little turn, as we always do, this movie cost $3 million to make. I feel like they could have done it for cheaper, but that's my opinion. And it grossed a whopping $1.4 million at the box office, so in the red.
All I'm saying is if that tells them anything, it's that Tusk 2 is on the way.
If it's not, I'll be disappointed.
So to get back kind of to the plot, and emphasis on kind of, because there really isn't much of a plot.
No.
Traveling man, he's on his way to Canada to meet a fan who has chopped his leg off with a ninja sword. And when he goes to make fun of this fan and interview him in a comedic way, he actually pulls up on his fan's funeral as he has killed himself. That's pretty dark. And what does our leading man say at this funeral when he shows up? Oh fuck.
Yeah, and loudly, like
Loudly,
there's a
to
funeral,
his family.
There's a funeral going on. Who cares? I'm here for the podcast.
That's when I knew that I probably wouldn't like this guy very much.
They really, by the way, just hammer that out of the park. You don't like this guy.
You hate him. He's loud.
Zero likable qualities.
I had to turn the TV down so many times just because he's so loud.
Yeah.
But anyways, he thinks to himself, "Ah, man, I'm all the way in Canada. This cost me a whopping $550 to travel here. I guess I gotta find some other quirky or kooky man to interview." And boy does he find one. So let me start with a little PSA here. Maybe you're listening to this. Maybe you're an aspiring podcaster. You want to interview people. If you are relieving yourself at a public urinal and you see a handwritten note that says, "Here, come meet me in the middle of nowhere, no address, and I have stories from my tales at sea.
I have a room to rent as well.
A place to live, and in exchange, you'll just listen to my stories." This is red flag, red flag. Don't, at this point, take the note from above the urinal and visit this man in the middle of the woods.
Bad idea.
Bad idea. That's asking to be turned into a walrus, I suppose.
Which is slowly but surely what happens next. He gets his leg cut off, and then he gets his hands sewn together to his, as they say in the movie, this is not my brainchild. His hands look like a crucified T-Rex. And then he turns into a walrus made of skin, human skin, and it not as gross as I thought it was going to be when I first figured out that was going to happen. Poorly done.
That's where all $3 million went, and they really dropped the ball. Like, I feel like if you gave me like $2,000 to spend on making a human walrus suit, I think I could do better.
Who did they go to and say, "Listen, I have an odd request"?
The local taxidermist.
I need you to make a walrus suit that looks like human skin. And then, the guy's like, all right. Because if you make costumes like that, that's not the weirdest thing you've heard.
Yeah, I like to imagine that the director of this movie he got his $3 million and he laid it out in front of him and decided, like, all right, well, we need so-and-so for camera equipment and crew, so-and-so for acting. And then he put this huge pile, probably $2 million. He's like, we need a walrus suit. This is the magnum opus of the movie. We need to make this suit good, and we need to do it authentically. So he divvied that money up even more, right? Just follow me here. He takes a trip and sees a sea captain himself that has experience with walruses, and he's like, "Listen, I've drawn up a couple things. Do you think this would work?" And the sea captain, of course, refers him to the local taxidermist. And then he goes to the taxidermist and actually builds the monstrosity that is the suit.
Yeah, I hope that's what happened. I need more lore behind the walrus suit. But to continue, our, of course, synopsis that takes the whole time. I actually don't think this one will. He turns into a walrus. People realize he's missing. They go on a hunt for him. They find a detective. The detective's been looking for this guy who's killed 23 people. And then, they find him.
Well, I think before they find him, you guys need to realize that not only has this old man been turning him physically into a walrus, But
Oh, yeah.
but of course he's also mentally transforming him into a walrus. And at the end of it, the old man comes out in a walrus suit of his own and says, "Mr. Tusk, we must fight to the death now." And and they do.
Oh my goodness. This movie didn't make any sense.
So when I read the story at first, or not the story, but like the Netflix description of it, and I've seen like reviews of the movie that kind of before I turned the review off. So I didn't know the ending, but I knew that he turned into a walrus. And that's kind of just like where my local know-how ended. But I can tell you for sure I was not expecting to get two men in walrus suits fighting just by like moving their head slightly.
Yeah.
The suit did not move very well.
No. He tried to make him swim, but like he's still a human. Like you can't breathe underwater. But I think my favorite part of the movie, which I can't believe this is an actual scene in the movie, is the ending. When they go to the abandoned zoo to feed the walrus. And yeah, he's there, and it flashes back to a time when the past walrus, his name is Wallace, I think.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend were talking, and she's like something about how crying isn't for babies. It's the only thing that separates us between animals. And then the last we see is him as a walrus shedding a tear.
Talk about a poetic ending. If you guys have seen our Clone Wars quickie, we talked about how that has a very poetic ending. And to be honest, I think this might even top it.
I'm ready to say that's wrong and that this is the worst movie I've ever seen.
So Jacob looks at me while we're watching this movie, dare I say it, not even 10 minutes ago. And we're like halfway through the movie at this point, and Jacob looks at me and he's like, I've been thinking about it, and I don't think that there's a movie worse.
I searched my brain to try. I've seen a lot of bad movies. A lot. I've watched a lot of bad movies with beers. This one takes a cake.
I think that I thought this movie was supposed to be a horror, but I think it is supposed to be a comedy, which makes it even funnier how unfunny this movie is.
Yeah, hot take incoming. Makes it worse.
I watched a part today of the Lunch Club podcast, and that's a podcast I listen to. But they talked about in that movie like bad movies, as in like Sharknado type movies, where it's like where it's movies that are so like supposed to be bad, and they have less of a charm than movies that are bad on accident.
Sure.
Because, when they're created to be bad, it loses that effect like The Room has, where he believed that this project would succeed.
Sure.
And yet it failed so miserably.
Soul crushing brings me a sense of joy.
Exactly. And I think this movie, I first thought that it was supposed to be bad. And so I was like, well, this will be kind of like a joy that Sharknado gives me. Because Sharknado gives me joy. Yeah, I enjoy the movies. They're funny. But the fact that this was supposed to be a comedy, and like there were parts that were supposed to be really funny. The detective, I think he was supposed to be a funny guy, and how he talked and how he acted.
Yeah.
And it was just so painfully bad that it made it funny.
I think that whole scene with him and the guy that didn't really know what he was saying, that he called him the man-child. I think that was one of the worst, probably 7 minutes it felt like.
Dude, it was longer.
Of my life. I'm not even saying in movies, I'm saying ever.
You know when you watch a movie and you get to a scene that's going on a little bit too long?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, wow, this is really, a lot. They should really cut. That happened like within the first 2 minutes of this like 7 to 10 minute scene.
I zoned out. I do not know what they were talking about.
They were talking about the hockey player,
I know-
Gregory Gumdrop.
I know he was a hockey
Yeah,
player.
Gregory Gumdrop.
And I know the guy helped as a volunteer, like a coach, to pick up sticks. And then I lost it after that.
I don't really know what happened either. It was like, you see those shows where you've got someone who's trying to get into like sketch comedy, and so they're going to like a comedy club, and they did this on The Office with Michael Scott, and you get the two people, and they stand up in the front of the room, and they get a topic, and they're just supposed to go and just talk. That's what this was, but it's like if two really, really unqualified sketch comics were up there.
If you pulled like two schmoes off the street and said, "All right, talk,"
And you say, "You, sir, are a part-time hockey coach helper, and you've got a brown recluse in your toilet, and you are an inspector." And that's what it was.
But you have an awful French accent.
Because you would be... He was like, "As an inspector of the law, I am not authorized to discharge my weapon at an insect." And then the other guy would be like...
I have a question about the French guy. When they were eating at the restaurant, why did he squish his burger down?
That just came out of nowhere.
Did the joke just go right over my head?
I think it went over everyone's head, because I'm not sure there was comedy there.
I just didn't get it. I was like, what is going on?
I think that the joke was that just the burger went flat.
Yeah, I didn't get it. It didn't make sense at all.
It was very odd to watch, though, like how he did it. Like he like stood up and like crushed with both hands. It was like when you watch those videos of that machine that just crushes objects.
A hydraulic press.
A hydraulic press. And it just... right down on the burger.
I didn't get the majority of the scenes in this movie.
I think it was supposed to be like random equals funny.
This movie is very, very like early YouTube. Like early YouTube would have eaten this up. Like when Smosh was becoming cool. Like, okay, if I watched this movie when I was 8 or 9, I wouldn't have been old. This movie is not appropriate for a 9-year-old. I'm not saying that. But I would have thought, this is the funniest movie I've ever seen.
Especially The Inspector. I would have been crying.
Yeah, I would have thought that was so funny. I don't know. This movie did have the guy from Epic Mealtime, the food show from YouTube, which I liked.
Yeah.
A little blast from the past.
There was a time in this movie, and I think that this is a scene where we got to talk about, where I was actually crying. I was laughing so hard. But if you guys have watched bad horror before, if you've watched movies like Birdemic or
I love
In the Tall Grass,
Truth or Dare.
There's always the line in the movie. You know, the point in the movie where you know that no longer does this have any chance of being redeemable. It's the point of no return, where they utter it and you're just laughing so hard because you know that there is no point to even continuing watching. But in The Tall Grass, that was where he broke his he crushed his wife's skull, and he's like, "All flesh is grass."
Yeah, great.
There's the line.
Yeah.
In this movie, it is where the old man is eating dinner with Wallace, and at this point, he's not a walrus yet.
He doesn't have a leg, though.
Yeah, he doesn't have a leg, and he's revealing his evil plan. And we talked about this kind of in the very intro of this podcast when I said that's a direct quote from the movie.
Yeah.
He stood up and he's like, "Ever since man has stood erect in the sun, we have asked ourselves this question: is a man actually a walrus?"
It was beautiful. The only thing that could have made that better is if there was a lightning bolt and a thunderclap right after.
I did like how right after it, the realization sets in on Wallace, and he's like, "Oh, so I'm gonna be a walrus now," and he starts crying, and then the old man starts imitating him crying. And he's just like, "Wah, wah."
I also, I do like that. Another thing that I think went over my head was the whole Polar Pop cup thing. Why was he still drinking Polar Pops as a walrus?
Dude, I'm telling you, it's random equals funny.
Is that really what it is?
I think it is. I think that this movie reminds me of, like, anyone who scrolled through the Instagram Explore page is quite familiar with screenshots from a website called Tumblr. This reminds me of, like, some, like, quirky 35-year-old on Tumblr who's, like, typed something out. Like, listen, guys, I've got a really good idea for a horror movie. And they typed all this out about the man who turns into a walrus but still drinks Polar Pops. And then you've got the comments like, OP, we need to make this happen. This is what this movie reminds me of. Like a bad Tumblr text post.
I have one question to ask you that I have to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Will this movie age well?
I think to answer that, we already know the answer, and that's absolutely not. I think it's impressive how a movie in 2014 has already aged so poorly in, 6 years?
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
The real question is, how is Netflix having this on its platform?
I don't know.
Like, has this just been like an oversight? Like, no one's watched this movie in so long
They were
Netflix
just like,
just forgets it exists.
Netflix is like, you remember the old meme with the blue button that said a word on it? It was like, shh. If you watch it on YouTube, you see me getting ready to smack the button. This is like Netflix sees bad horror movie. Bye!
But no, the themes, I don't, they said Nazi party so many times in this movie.
Yeah, I feel like Netflix, as a corporation that sees itself as good, even though, I mean, Netflix, you don't really hear any bad thing. They don't have, like, factories in China where they work people to death. They're just like a company that buys a lot of products.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that, as a corporation, they're cool with it.
Yeah.
But then again, Netflix does like comedians, though.
That's true.
I just don't think this is funny.
Yeah, this is just so unfunny.
Netflix did make The Babysitter, though.
They made The Babysitter?
Yeah. You know, it's a Netflix original.
That has to be like the oldest Netflix Oh, wait. I'm thinking of a different The Babysitter.
You're thinking of the awful movie that we watched with, like, King Botch.
No, I'm not thinking of that one.
That's the one I'm talking about.
I'm thinking of is it called The Babysitter? It's with Adam Sandler. And he's the daycare something, maybe? Oh, do you know what I'm talking about?
The only thing I can think of is Daddy Daycare, but that's not Adam Sandler.
Who is it?
Eddie Murphy?
Maybe. I don't know. There's some...
That movie's... I'm going to defend that movie if you're trashing that movie.
Dude, I haven't seen that movie since I was like 4 years old. I'm just saying, like...
That's
what came to mind.
That one's aged well.
I don't know. I feel like this could age well. See, the problem is, right? This movie could be like a bad movie lover's dream movie.
Yeah.
But you have to really, even for bad movie lovers, you have to lower your standards a bit. Because this is like pretty big budget.
$3 million's a lot for a bad horror movie.
Yeah, because like, what the horror company, the Blumhouse, what is their average money they spend on horror movies that are good?
I don't know, but it's nothing.
Yeah, it's not $3 million, that's for sure.
Like, they did The Purge, and The Purge, I don't think cost but like $1.
But what I'm...
Okay, The Purge was a good one. They knew they were going to make money off of.
Yeah.
And it cost $3 million.
Like, this is a risk for $3 million.
Yeah.
Because already your audience... You've not got your core horror fans, because a horror fan's like, oh, I can't take this seriously at all. What, man turns into a walrus? And then you don't got your comedy fans, because comedy is like, well, this is kind of gross. Not really like what I want from a comedy movie. So their only audience was so bad it's funny horror fans. To spend $3 million on that limited of an audience?
Not only that, how many go to the... Like, okay, out of that audience, there's even a smaller percentage that go to movies. I feel
True.
like that audience is dominated by streaming services, and maybe this is just us being hilljacks living in Southern Indiana, but I feel like streaming is younger than 2014. Like really, streaming being our main method of viewing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, maybe that, like I said, maybe that's just us being rednecks, but like, I don't know. I feel like if this movie was released as a Netflix original now, it'd probably get some traction.
Oh, I bet it would.
If it was like The Babysitter. Because I think that was like their goal was like this stupid, funny, we've talked about stupid, funny horror, and it's just bad.
I don't think they had the right audience nor the right time period.
No.
To release this movie. And almost like it's just such a weird place. Because like, I don't know, Sharknado movies, right? If we're talking about bad horror, which I don't know if I'd call Sharknado's horror. I think they're like this version of horror.
Yeah.
Where it's like just kind of like gory at some points, but like also the gore looks really fake.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sharknado movies, I don't know. I feel like they're in a weird place of their own, like for a huge, small niche audience. But I don't even think like half the people who like those would watch Tusk.
Yeah, and Sharknado only cost $2 million.
Which one?
The first one.
How much did Sharknado 3 cost? That's the real question.
Okay, so Sharknado 4 cost $4 million.
Okay, well, Sharknado 4 is the one with the mech suit, so that's got to be pretty.
Sharknado 3 is $2.4 million. 5 is $5 million.
Well, I was just thinking, okay, so that's still not bad, because Sharknado 3, I'm pretty sure, is the one where they're in space at the moon fighting sharks with lightsaber chainsaws.
Are you sure that's not The Force Awakens?
No, I am sure it's not The Force Awakens.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, because The Force Awakens didn't even have lightsaber chainsaws. Maybe it did? I don't know, it was a weird time in Sharknado.
I'm looking at, so Sharknado 1 is $2 million, 2 is $2 million, 3 is $2.4 million, 4 is $3 million, 5 is their most expensive at $5 million.
Was 5 their recent one, or was that 6?
5. There might be a 6th one.
I'm pretty sure there was 6. 5 came out so much.
5 came out in 2017.
Yeah, the 6th one came out
6 came out in 2018, the last Sharknado. And let's look at the budget for that bad boy.
I know 5 probably cost a bunch because it was all over the world.
Yeah, Sharknado 6 is $3 million.
Sharknado 5 is one of just the most iconic movies for me ever. So I'm gonna this is a total tangent from what we were talking about. But as far as that niche audience that likes Sharknado movies, I'm definitely a part of it. I followed it since the first one came out on Sci-Fi, and I've been watching the premiere ever since. I know that I'm gonna look like a fool, and like the way, I don't know if you know this, Eddie Burback, if you've heard of him.
No.
He's on YouTube, but he was on the Lunch Club podcast today, and the way he described Sharknado movies, I'm pretty sure, was like fast food for bad horror movies. But like, I love McDonald's.
Okay, I love McDonald's, but that's pretty fair.
Yeah, so I'm all in for it. But the 5th one in particular, I didn't watch the premiere. I actually watched it with my friend Nathaniel. He was over here, and we watched all the movies together. And the 5th one had the best quote ever, where Finn Shepard meets the Pope, and he bows down and he says, "Forgive me, Father, for I am Finn." And I what a quote.
You're right. The Sharknado is just a cheaper, better version that appeals to more people than Tusk.
Yeah. If you asked me, like, should I watch Tusk, I would say, no, just watch Sharknado.
Yeah. This movie's not good.
I mean, like most movies, though, I would argue this for almost every movie. And that's a bold statement. But almost every movie could be super fun to watch if you're in the right setting.
True. And if you're watching with people, I feel like movies are so much more enjoyable to watch.
If you want to sit at home and watch a movie and you choose... Excuse me. If you want to sit at home and watch a movie and you choose Tusk, you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, if I watched this alone, I would be so much more angry for this podcast.
Is this an all-time party movie?
Yeah.
It's gotta be, right?
See, that's the thing. That's where this movie fits in perfectly. It's like a you're like appealing to a teenage audience, definitely, because it's got the raunchy humor up there.
It's a little edgy.
And so here's my little theory, right? My game theory.
Oh.
But when it comes to humor like that, I know that's like the rated R brand, but that appeals to like 15, 16-year-olds.
You could argue more than people who are 18.
Oh, for sure. Because I feel like a certain age, you just like you're not fazed by it, and it's just like a lot, and not like it's not funny, it's just, oh.
Yeah.
Well, this is pretty cheap comedy, just saying the F word.
Yeah.
So it's like a perfect like junior year after prom movie.
All time.
Where everyone's gathered in like someone's basement after prom, and you just put this on.
Yeah, all time. All time. I can't argue with that. And unless you have anything to say, I think we should wrap up.
I feel like that's the perfect end of this podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Check out our social media, Twitter, Instagram, Discord if you want to hop on and tell us your favorite bad movies.
Play some Minecraft.
Yes, Minecraft will be there. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
I'll see you guys next time.
Goodbye.